Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's time for the Brown Sports Bag from the Heart of the Barrens, a weekly local sports machine on ESPN Radio 1230. Alongside John Butler, here's your host, James Brown.
Well, John, we're back again this week. It's been a fascinating, turn of events in several different sporting arenas over the past week since we were on. And we're going to start out with the College Baseball World Series, mostly because it's all but settled. I think there's just one game left. It's Arkansas and Auburn playing to get in, and they're playing right now. You can track that down. And then we had a fascinating game earlier today, and, in first inning, I guess. And it's Arkansas and Ole Miss playing right now. Auburn has won. They are in. Sorry about that. But they scored like 11 runs in the first inning.
11 runs.
Yeah, just got fired up.
3 pitchers for North Carolina. I watched that first inning. 7 hits, a homer, an error. North Carolina could do. I mean, you're talking about a blitz. Kind of a sick way to go out if you're North Carolina. It's a home game too.
Yeah,
but they were never in it.
Yeah,
just got pounded.
Yeah, and the final score was 14-7. So I mean, and North Carolina was considered one of the top teams in the nation. I think they were a team that everybody expected to have a shot at winning it this year. They
hosted the tournament, so they were a top seed.
Yeah, so there's that. That one's set. Over the weekend, Louisville absolutely
destroyed,
mollywopped East Carolina.
Yeah, and they look like a legitimate contender. Now they struggled down the stretch a little bit. They went 2 and out in the ACC.
Yeah,
and then they actually lost a game in the regionals and had to come back and win.
Right.
But boy, they were pretty darn sharp against East Carolina. I mean the pitcher that pitched on the second day on Saturday had a no-hitter going to the 9th, and they scored over 10 runs both games, and they look for real. Now what Louisville's got to do, this is their 4th trip, I believe, under Coach McDonald.
Yeah,
maybe their 5th trip. I think it's 4th, but they've yet to have a whole lot of success once they get to Omaha for the College World Series, and so it'd be nice to see them play a little bit better. They've got some great arms on that team. Great arms. Their hitting is they're kind of scrappy. I wouldn't say they've got great hitters, but they can flat out pitch the ball. The problem is they're going to run into the number 1 seed is going to be Vandy.
Yeah.
Since UCLA was the number 1 team in the nation and got knocked off, Vandy will be the top seed, and that's who Louisville's got their first round bid. It's a tough first round draw, and the problem is if you lose that first game in the College World Series, you're in a world of trouble.
Yeah, because you've really got a long way to come back to try to get back into that championship game. And
really test your pitching, and they do have pitching depth. But boy, it's when you lose that first game, that's trouble.
I think it was maybe it was Ron Polk. He had like a former coach at Mississippi State. He had like just a great team one year, and they lost that first game. And he said nobody has that much pitching. He's like, you just can't lose that game and have a chance to come back and win it because of what you just said about the pitching. He's like, you have 3 guys maybe college.
Starters.
Yeah, 3 starters. But you're talking about trying to win 5 games over.
Yeah, it just kills your bullpen.
Yeah.
What it does. And Vandy's probably, like I said, what I've seen of college baseball, Vandy's probably the best team in the country, and they had a freshman that threw Saturday that was one of the best performances I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
No-hit Duke, and he had 19 strikeouts. 130 pitches he threw, but 19 strikeouts and a no-hitter.
Yeah.
And he's a big-time prospect. And he's not their number 1. They've got another. He's probably their best pitcher, but he generally is their second in the rotation.
Now, I was reading that's the first no-hitter in the Super Regionals, isn't it? I think I read that. In all the history of the Super Regionals.
I think that's right, though the Louisville kid had one going to the 9th.
Yeah.
So pretty good. But, Vandy has the player of the year hitting-wise, too.
Yeah.
I think the 3rd overall pick in the draft. So they've got great pitching, great hitting. I think they're definitely the favorite.
Now, we were looking down the list last week when the Super Regionals were getting started, counting off, the SEC and the ACC and that kind of stuff. We had a couple of matchups where it was ACC versus SEC, such as the
North Carolina,
Auburn, and Florida State and LSU. I think it was they played each other, and so far that's been a split. But the Pac-12 schools did not do very well. Texas Tech is still in it, so that's the Big 12 or whatever. But it's still been the southeastern United States that's really kind of dominated this year.
Well, there's two ACC teams made it, Louisville and Florida State, so 2 of the 8. You got it's going to be at least there's going to be 4 SEC teams.
Yeah.
Auburn, Mississippi State, Vandy, and the winner of Arkansas, Ole Miss. So that's
right.
Pretty darn
Pretty
impressive.
yeah.
Then you got Big Ten, Michigan, and the Big 12, Texas Tech.
Yeah. And the thing is that the Pac-12 was supposed to be a superb baseball conference, and it has been. But this year, it's just been dominated by these teams in the southeast of the United States.
Yeah, and it's you can play year round in the South, but you can play year round in the West as well. Michigan is kind of
the real odd one out here.
Well, the Big Ten doesn't tend to send a lot of teams to the College World Series, and it's mainly because of the weather. I mean, it's hard to you're not going outside in January, February, and much of March, and up in Michigan and Minnesota.
Mm-hmm. Now, real quick, let's kind of talk about how this the Baseball World Series works out, because we've had regionals, and then that was, there were 4 teams in a pod in the regional. Then you have the Super Regional, which is a 2 of 3. It's not, I don't know why they call it a Super Regional, but the name would indicate that you would think it would just be like the next 4 teams all in a pod like they were in the regional, but it doesn't work out that way. And then the final 8 teams end up in Omaha playing, and it's a double elimination tournament. But is the championship game
2 out of 3?
2 out of 3, right? So it doesn't matter really how you get there. You get there, and then you play a 2 of 3, right?
That's in the finals. That's correct.
So it's kind of
it's about a 10-day till. It lasts about 10 days.
Yeah. So it's kind of a completely different setup than any other college sport.
It is, and probably because of pitching.
Yeah.
I guess they don't want to make it single elimination because you can just be dominated with a number 1 pitcher.
Yeah.
And knock you out, and that may not be an indication that you're the better team.
Yeah.
So I think that's why they do it.
Now, and also the other thing about college baseball that I think is interesting, and my son and I, we ended up getting to spend the weekend together, and we kind of had a good long conversation about how the scholarship system works in college baseball, and some of the things that I like about it that I would really like. I don't know about football, but I'd love to see basketball adopt a little more of how college baseball functions in terms of the scholarships, going pro versus not going pro, getting in the draft and making decisions and that kind of thing. I know there's some timing issues that are different for college baseball versus basketball and that kind of stuff. But I'd like the fact that these players have the opportunity to either go pro or
out of high school.
Yeah, out of high school.
Out of high school, if you get drafted, you can go directly to pro. If you decline that, then you
can still be in the draft, but decide not to go pro and then go to college.
That's correct. But then you have a 3-year commitment if you go to college.
Yeah,
and then you'll be, after those 3 years, then you're eligible for a redraft.
Yeah.
So that's. I like that too. Mm-hmm. I think it's a good system. The only thing I don't like is they draft these kids in the middle of the super regional.
Yeah,
and I think that's unfair to the kids. I think they could probably wait till after the College World Series, but I think it's a little weird to be like the kid out of Vanderbilt is the number 3 overall pick.
Yeah,
and he is going to have to play through the World Series without signing, and I don't think it matters too much as a hitter.
Yeah.
But
Mike, as a pitcher.
As a pitcher, it does, because the signing bonus is like 10, 11, 12 million at the top of the draft. And a pitcher can make one bad pitch, and it's a little bit risky. And I think it's also a lot of pressure on the managers. You don't want to overuse a kid who's number 1, 2, number 3 pick.
Yeah, because you're a college coach. You're getting paid to win that World Series, but you now have to make a decision about what's better between your team versus that player who's a high prospect.
That's correct.
And that's
so I like the system in terms of draft them out of high school if they don't want to go. Mm-hmm. They got 3 years that you owe a university. I like that.
Yeah.
I don't like the draft in the middle of their tournament.
Right, and that's what goes back to, like I said, I'd like to see that out of some other sports, especially college basketball, where if you don't sign that pro contract, you don't sign that contract with an agent or whatever, you get to go through the whole draft process so that you have a good idea of whether or not you want to do it.
And they don't have to do 3 years. They can make it 2 years if they want to do it that way.
Because then I think that'd benefit college basketball tremendously. Because if you know, you look at Kentucky, all right, if you know that Anthony Davis and that group that came in all as freshmen are going to go into the draft, but then they decide they want to go play college, you got a couple of years to work with them. And that's even true for a number of other schools. I think it'd even be more beneficial for some of the smaller schools or less well-known schools, because so year one that they do this, if they do this in college basketball, you're going to have this class that's split. Draft, those who go into the draft get picked, decide to play pro. Those who don't go where they want to, then they want in the draft, and they go and play college. Well, that's going to change the dynamic for year two of doing this, because now you're going to have some kids who get to make a choice about not wanting to ride the bench or whatever. They want to go play somewhere. That opens up the door for maybe some of the smaller colleges to pick up some of these blue chip players if they decide to play college basketball. I think that'd benefit college basketball on a grander scale.
Yeah, the key though is the NBA has no obligation to help college basketball.
Right.
They're all into themselves.
Right.
And they're their own organization, and they don't. What they do doesn't necessarily have to be to the benefit of college basketball.
Yeah, but out of the committee that they had,
I would think the NBA would like to see players play a couple years in college before they draft them anyway. I would think they would have a better gauge on who can play rather than squander a 10th pick on a player who maybe not can play, but you're taking a reach for. I would think they would actually want their kids to play in a college atmosphere for 2 years. I think it'd make their draft a little bit more accurate.
Yeah, well, and the one and done rule that's in place is an NBA rule. It's not a college rule.
Yeah,
and that rule is just there to protect the owners from themselves from making bad bets.
They can set their age. There's no discrimination. They can set the age whatever they want to. If they want to say we're not taking anybody under the age of 20, that's fine.
Yeah,
NFL does it.
Yep,
21.
Yeah, and so then the backside of that though would be college athletics, the NCAA making the decision to say you can test all the way through the draft
and even be drafted,
return as long as you don't sign a professional contract of any type.
Right.
So on the backside of that, the NCAA would have to open up the door for those players to test that water fully, I think.
Yeah, they're not the most flexible organization in the world.
No, and that's kind of gotten them in a lot of trouble, I think.
When it comes to student athletes and things like that.
Yeah, their definition is pretty rigid, and some people like it and some people don't, and I think we've reached an age where they're going to have to make some decisions that traditionally they would not like to make.
I agree.
But they're kind of in a rock and a hard place because it's been exposed that the system they have in place isn't exactly working.
No, for anybody. Except for maybe them at the top in terms of money.
It may be working for college coaches as well because they're getting paid and they still have flexibility to kind of do whatever they want.
I agree.
But back to the baseball, who do you think is going to win this thing? You mentioned Vandy's probably going to be the number one.
Vanderbilt will be the number one. I think they got the best, what I've seen, the best overall team.
Yeah.
But it's a crapshoot. It comes down to pitching, and you can't lose early. I'd love to see, obviously, Louisville win it, but I don't think they've got I don't think they have the team to win the College World Series. Florida State, it's kind of a neat story. They've been there. That coach has been there 23 times. Mike Martin, he's retiring. Mm-hmm. He's never won it.
Yeah,
and they kind of snuck in a lot.
Yeah, they were like Michigan. They were both 3 seeds in their regionals.
That's correct. So that would be kind of a nice deal. Louisville or Vanderbilt would be who I'm for. They're both local.
Yeah,
both great programs. Unfortunately, they drew each other.
Yeah, I'm rooting for Louisville, but I would also say that I'm rooting for Mississippi State. That's where my wife's family all went to school. And
I mean, shot at Ole Miss and Mississippi State can be in it.
Yeah,
that's something else.
Yeah, I mean, a friend who texted me over the weekend, he's like, why is Mississippi so good at baseball? I'm like, well, I mean, if you look on the roster, I told him there were 2 things. One is there are a lot more Mississippi kids staying in state and playing college sports now. Used to, they'd abandon and go to Alabama, LSU, just depending. They'd go other places and play, but a lot of them are staying home. And the other thing is, like all these other Southeastern Conference schools and schools in the South, they are pilfering players from the north. You look down their rosters, and you got kids from Minnesota, Wisconsin, Montana,
you can play
Nova
year-round.
Scotia,
Well,
whatever.
Yeah. I mean, it's the weather.
Yeah.
It's obviously the big draw. It's weather, and the SEC has the tremendous facilities.
Yeah.
I mean, the LSU facility is top notch. Mississippi State's a beautiful facility.
Yeah, it is.
So, they got great baseball facilities.
Yeah, it would be hard to go into one of those, as a baseball player, go into one of those facilities and say no.
That's correct.
Because, I mean, they really are beautiful. I mean, we just, unless you go and check out, I've been to
It's better than a lot of minor league facilities.
Yeah. Unless you go there and check it out, it's kind of hard to kind of grasp the dynamic of college baseball.
Arkansas's got a nice one.
Yeah, at some of those schools down there. It's hard to grasp it. Well, this is Brown Sports Bag, brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. When we come back, we're going to talk about the three-point line.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag on ESPN Radio 1230.
Well, it was announced late last week that the NCAA is moving the men's college three-point line to the international distance of 22 feet 1 3/4 inches, which is, for all intents and purposes, in my mind, 22 feet 2 inches. I don't know why they had to shave a quarter of an inch off that thing. Who knows? I mean, I find that kind of math odd on the three-point line, but that's beside the point, I guess. But they're moving it to that. That's basically the international line. It had been 20 feet 9 inches since 2008, 2009, I think it was, and it was 19 feet 9 inches before that. So over the last decade, they've moved it 3 feet, pretty close to 2.5 feet.
So they got one more move.
Yeah, to get to the NBA line, you think?
Probably someday.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, it's a big, for a high school kid who's used to shooting 19 feet, going from 19 to the international, which is 22, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty good. Now, it's not much of a difference on the sides. The side that you're
you're kind of limited there. Anyway.
You're limited there, but from the wings and from the top, that's a pretty good that's a pretty good jump for, I think, true freshman.
Yeah, I mean that's the elbow extended 3-point shot that has become kind of all the rage, I think, with players like Stephen Curry shooting from there. It's because nobody ever shot a 3-pointer from that particular spot, either side on that particular spot on the floor. It's like the introduction of players like Stephen Curry, who will run, they'll run screens for him right there. That's become a shot that a lot of people actually take nowadays. And I guess used to people didn't shoot that three because the angle, you don't have a good backboard angle on that. The line of sight on that angle is kind of odd, I think, too. It's either straight away or from the corners a lot of times for 3-point shooting. But anyway, so that's going to make an interesting shot for him. As you said, it's going to be a challenge coming straight out of high school. But I don't know, what they do a lot in AAU, that kind of stuff, other than, from some of the videos I've been watching,
they
travel.
Just play.
Yeah, they just play. There's no conscious thought apparently for some, but I don't know what they, the distance they work on and that kind of thing. So I think that is going to be quite a challenge for them.
I think for the incoming freshmen, it'll be a little bit of an adjustment. Yeah. What they're clearly trying to do is to create more space.
Yeah.
Which creates more freedom of movement. Is what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
We'll see. The women are staying at 29. They're not changing.
Right.
Will it affect the men's game? I think it'll be a little bit of an adjustment for the incoming freshmen. Other than that, I doubt it.
Well, does a 1.5 distance on the 3-point line really open up the floor that much, do you think? For offenses to run?
Evidently, that's what they're thinking.
Yeah.
But, just about everybody plays the same anyway.
Yeah.
To be perfectly honest with you, there's not a whole lot of difference in styles anymore.
Right.
So it'll make the shot a little bit more challenging. Mm-hmm. But they're clearly trying to go more, not only to the international game, they're getting closer and closer to the NBA game.
Yeah. I do wonder about...
that's not the change they need to make. There's other changes.
So what would that be?
They need to go to 4 quarters.
Yes, that's right.
They're the men's basketball is the only basketball sport that does not play 4 quarters.
Yeah.
High school, pros and women's when the women moved to that 2 years ago, calling women's games at Western, it's a much better way to watch a game.
Yeah,
but it's because what you do when you do that is you get 5 fouls a quarter, and after the 5th you shoot 2 shots. So what it also does is it restarts your fouls. And what happens in the men's game right now when you're playing 2 halves, as soon as you get 7 fouls at the 14-minute mark, you're shooting free throws the rest of that game.
Yeah, it becomes a grind.
It becomes a grind.
Yeah.
Well, and when you play quarters, it resets it, which makes it a lot better. Plus, you have 4 end of the quarter situations, which are most people like to see that.
Yeah.
You eliminate a lot of the TV timeouts. You only get 1 per quarter. I just think the flow of the game, the pace of the game will be much better, and I think the guys will like it too. I don't know why they're holding on to this part of the half deal.
I mean, it does beg the question: is NCAA men's basketball the most archaic thing left in college sports?
Yes,
because they just stick to things for no apparent reason.
Right.
I mean, they have reasons why they make it, but they're just not valid reasons.
It's a much better game. It helped the women's game unbelievable when they went to quarters. Also, in the last minute, you call timeout, you get the ball at half court. That's the NBA game. It creates more excitement, and just the pace is better. You don't have all the delays and timeouts and 100 free throws that slow up the game.
That's one of the things I was going to say. I don't really like going to men's college basketball games a lot because I like the atmosphere, but as you're watching the game, especially if it's on television or it's being interrupted for some reason outside just the general calling timeouts and that kind of stuff, you really don't even know what's happening. You're like, well, why'd they stop?
Right.
And you're kind of, and it seems to just break up runs and that kind of stuff in the game, which is, I feel like, should be left to the coaches and players to figure out how to do, not the media timeout or the mandatory timeouts, that kind of stuff. Because also you hear this all the time. They're like, well, they have a media timeout coming up such and such time. So you're watching a game and
every 4 minutes.
Yeah, and you're watching a game and the coaches are just letting things happen. They're not really making decisions, and then you start going, well, what are they really doing?
Yeah, I think that would the biggest change I'd make in the men's game would be the quarters.
Yeah,
and then the natural things that come with that was the fouls.
Yeah,
you get 5 fouls per quarter, and after that, it's a bonus, and that it resets. And I think that would really help the pace of the game. The flow of the game would be so much better.
Yeah. Now, what about the women's game? Are there things you would change with that after spending a couple of years calling Lady Toppers games?
I'm not for sure. I think they've kind of got it. To be perfectly honest with you, I don't really have a real complaint with it because they went to the 4 quarters and the foul situation. I kind of like it, to be perfectly honest with you. They got the 30-second shot clock. The flow of the game is good, and to be perfectly honest with you, I think the women's game is run better than the men's game.
Do you think they should shorten the shot clock in college men's basketball?
What is it now? Is it 30?
30. I think it's 30 right now.
30? No, I think it's
instead
fine.
of 24.
Yeah, no, I think 30's fine.
Yeah,
it enables you to at least a time to run some semblance of an offense and so forth. I don't have a problem with that. Replays need to be handled a bit better.
Yeah,
the last 2 minutes of the game is ridiculous.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know if I'd allow a replay except for the last minute of the game, except for a fight, things like that.
Yeah, I don't think they should. I think they should utilize replays on very specific scoring-related situations, such as you should replay whether or not somebody had basket interference.
Right.
You should check that kind of thing because that actually affects the score of the game.
Well, most of the replays anymore in the last minute or two of the game has to do with who has the ball and the clock.
Yeah, so I mean,
it's every time a clock stops, they're going to go back. They're going back and 0.2 of a second here or there, and it just makes it forever.
That's just too nitpicky.
I agree.
To me.
I agree. To try to get it perfect, they're ruining the game.
Yeah.
So that part has to. They got to get a handle on replay because replays do affect the flow of the game at times, and just to get things perfect.
Yeah,
can't do it that way.
I'm with you, and if I go back to the basket interference kind of example, or offensive or defensive basket interference, that kind of thing, because that does actually affect the score of the game.
Right.
Versus, the time doesn't necessarily affect the score of the game.
And you don't have to stop the game to do that. You can go back at the next stop.
You can just correct it.
That's correct.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, with replay. That's easy to do.
Yeah. I mean, the fans may not, but I mean, you can put it on the Jumbotron and say, this play's been reviewed.
Well, the other thing is, I would not let a coach call a timeout during a live ball.
Yeah, so
I don't like that. I don't like it in high school. I don't like it at any level. I don't think you can do it in the pros.
No, they eliminated that years ago. But all the timeouts had to be on the floor.
But high school is ridiculous.
They eliminated that when people would grab the ball and fly out of bounds, and the coach would be calling timeout.
Right.
They made it to where the players have to be able to do
If it's a live ball, it should be players only.
Yeah.
Because officials have too much to worry about rather than trying to listen or watch a coach try to call a timeout. A lot of times they anticipate it themselves.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing about the NBA. They're given more timeouts, but they're actually more restrictive in how those timeouts can be executed and that kind of stuff, which is probably good. But the bad thing then on the NBA side is that you get into like the last 2 minutes and it's like
too many timeouts.
Yeah, it's like 30 minutes to play 2 minutes, and you're like, can we get this game over with?
Right.
And, because I mean that's the most exciting time, and it being chopped up into like little bitty segments gets really annoying to try to watch or whatever. But I'm with you. I don't know about this 3-point line thing. I mean, it's probably going to have to move it, over time anyway, because the range of the players' abilities to shoot threes has grown beyond the actual difficult level of the three-pointer.
Probably, but it just something bothers me in the fact that so our players are getting good at it, so let's make it more difficult.
Well,
I don't. Where else in life does that happen?
That challenge should always exist. If you get it good at something, somebody should challenge you.
Narrow the holes in golf.
Yes, that's right.
Okay,
that's
all right.
Yeah, I think they should shrink the hoop so that the ball just barely fits through. I mean, they're such good shooters now. Let's
go back to wooden rackets in tennis.
Absolutely, yes, that's right.
It's a little troublesome by that.
Well, but also
most changes are made for safety, and this is just because they're making better percentage of threes, so let's make it more difficult. I don't know about that.
Well, and here's also the thing about it. I would say that they put the lines too close in college when they introduced them, because the international line's been the international line the whole time.
True.
And so they probably underestimated the skill level of the players to start with. When they introduced the line, they probably should have they probably should have put it at the international level to begin with. I mean, why not?
Okay.
Because that would have changed the dynamic of the game a long time ago, and we wouldn't be building up to something. It just would have been what it is. But very U.S.-centric way of doing things. We're just going to do it this way, and that's going to be it. You know what I mean?
That's right.
Nobody else matters. And as it turned out, the international players did matter. They've infiltrated the game on many levels, and they've shown some skills that we've adopted.
Well, typical of college basketball, they make a big change, but it's not the changes that they need to make.
Oh yeah, it's
they make the easy one.
Yes, that's right.
They don't do anything with the illegal recruiting or the bribery or anything else.
Yeah,
but we're going to move the 3-point line back.
Yeah, they do not follow that take the toughest road kind of thing. It usually leads to better results. Hit the easy road.
And by the way, all three of those coaches have either pled guilty or were found guilty.
That's right.
And the last one was the person from Auburn has not been sentenced.
Yeah, Chuck Person.
Yes, he has not. But the guy that was at
Arizona,
I think he got 3 months.
Yeah,
3 months, and another one got like 4 months.
Yeah, and
the head coach is at none of the programs have been even sanctioned.
Yeah, they've not been found accountable in any way.
None.
It's just these rogue assistant coaches all over the country.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, we're believing it. Well, this is Brown Sports Bag, brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back to talk a little Major League Baseball.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag on ESPN Radio 1230.
Well, John, we are almost at the halfway mark of the Major League Baseball season.
Are we?
Yeah, I think they're somewhere in mid-70s of games. So, I mean, what is it? Yeah, really, though. I mean, what is it? 81 games is like the halfway mark. So that we're a week away, from the halfway mark. I think that's right.
They're at 64.
That's all?
40-24. What's that?
Oh, yeah, my math is bad.
Okay.
So
no, we're not quite halfway.
yeah, we have 2 weeks left then till we get to halfway at the rate they play games. But I don't know, I feel like Major League Baseball is like this every year. I look down at about this part of the season and I say, oh, well, these teams look pretty good and these teams don't look very good at all. And that's usually, it pans out that way usually, which is a little bit odd because, they have 120 games to play or so before we get to the end of the season. But it is just amazing to me that you can kind of see how it's going to work out.
Yeah.
In mid-June.
It's a hard sport to follow right now, to be honest with you. In today's age, it's a really difficult. 162 games is. I don't know why they came up with that, by the way. But anyway.
They've discussed dialing it back, but nobody wants to come off of it for whatever reason.
Because of the money.
Yeah.
The players don't, because it's the money.
And they've talked about dialing it back because you have these northeastern teams that wind up in the World Series in October and it's snowing.
It is, but just to follow it, it's hard to follow. You got to be a rabid fan to follow Major League Baseball on an everyday basis.
Yeah,
it's because they play so many games, and it's. Now, to be honest with you, it's still interesting to go to one of these games.
Mm-hmm.
To go to a game, it's not that I wouldn't say it's overly exciting, but they're very fan friendly to go if you go up to Cincinnati or whatever.
Right.
But it's just to follow them on a day by day basis, and it's hard to ask the players to be 100% every time they play too.
to follow it on a day-to-day basis.
That's exactly right.
You mean I'm playing today? Yes, you're an everyday player.
But I'm sure baseball is happy. The Yankees are good as usual. They're way up there.
The Dodgers are good.
The Dodgers are really good. Maybe the best team in baseball.
Yeah.
The Cubs are in first place. So you got the Dodgers, Cubs, and Yankees. And are really good. Philadelphia is a big market. They're good. And I said the Dodgers they're the best team, I think, in the National League. The Astros look like they're just on a little mini dynasty. They won it 2 years ago, got beat last year in the American League championship game.
Right.
They're still young. They're 45-22. They're really good.
Yeah, we could have a Dodgers-Astros World Series this year, and I will be one of those people who says, although it's been this way for 10 years now, when did the Astros get in the American League? I'll be like, is this not the National League?
Traditional National League team. No more.
You're right. I have a hard time with that. I can't wrap my head around it.
So, the Reds are a little better than last year. They're 29-35, but they were way out of it last year. They're only 8 out of it, and their pitching is so much better.
Mm-hmm.
So they're a little bit more interesting to keep up with. And but you still have bad teams. Baltimore's terrible.
Yeah.
The Royals are terrible, 20-45. And if you are fans of those teams were out of it after 2 weeks of the season.
Well, and it wasn't a couple of years ago. The Royals were like the best team in baseball.
Yeah, but no more.
Yeah,
they're gone.
They just flush away those rosters.
And the Marlins are awful. There are 3 really bad teams. Royals, Orioles, and Marlins are really, really bad. Not competitive long term.
And that's kind of the thing about baseball is you have these teams, they can build up through their farm teams and that kind of stuff, maybe pick up a free agent, have a window of opportunity to win a World Series or get in the World Series, and then 2 years later you're like, wait, what happened to them?
Yeah,
because they had to sell everything off.
That's a smaller franchise.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah.
And the Marlins have done that. The Royals are doing that apparently. The Pirates have done that. They just they weren't successful with it.
The Pirates have been pretty good in the last 5 years.
Yeah,
they've been very competitive. They're 30-34 right now, though.
Yeah,
but they're a small franchise.
Yeah,
baseball is all about it's you better have a good general manager. You better draft well, develop your own players because it's expensive. There's no salary cap in baseball.
Yeah. When you say you better have a good general manager, you probably should hire Theo Epstein.
He's good.
He's done it pretty well.
Boston and Chicago.
Yeah, he's taken 2 moribund, old school pro teams, organizations, and turned them into competitive organizations. kind of amazing too. You know, I think of him as like Jerry West in the NBA. You look up and you're like, how does he do this?
He's had the benefit of the purse at both franchises.
Well,
Boston and Chicago has tons of money.
Yeah, I mean Boston had not been spending the money, and then they opened the door for him, or maybe they spent it unwisely.
Unlike Oakland, who has no money and they're good year in year out.
Yeah,
I think his name is Billy Bean.
Right,
pretty good GM.
Yeah, I mean, and the Rays kind of fall into that category too.
Rays are the other one. Very well run organization. Terrible place to play.
Yeah,
probably the worst stadium. Not probably is the worst stadium in baseball. Them in Oakland.
Yeah,
but unbelievably well run.
Yeah, they've just followed the. I mean, they end up losing their best players. They're in the eventually,
and they're in the toughest division. They got to play Boston and New York 18 games a year.
Yeah, the A's and the Rays follow the different system. They really farm their players, coach them up well, get them to the major leagues,
draft well.
They perform well when they get to the major leagues. That's kind of the opposite of the Yankees and the Red Sox, and I'd say the Dodgers at the moment. Maybe even the Cubs.
Well, the Dodgers draft really well.
They've benefited from that, but they also have the money these days to keep them.
They can keep them, but they are unbelievably drafted. I mean, almost every player on their roster, that plays are farmhands. I mean, they are really, really good.
Yeah, and then when they get tired of them, they trade them to the Reds.
When they can't help them.
The Reds get Puig, who's a lot of fun to watch.
He is.
That dude is absolutely wackadoodle.
He's an interesting cat. Yeah. I like him.
Yeah, I do too. I mean,
he's got some personality. I do. I like him. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't mind. Some people get all fired up about the bat flips and the watching the home runs and all that. I really don't care about that because baseball to me otherwise is pretty boring. Major League Baseball is pretty boring to me because the games take forever.
That's another problem with baseball. It's not only the season's long, the games are too long. And right now what they're running into, there's a lot of dead time in baseball just with at bats.
Yeah.
It's either the strikeouts are in the last couple of years all-time high, but also walks are. I mean also strikeouts are. So there's a lot of time when there's when players are striking out more than they've ever struck out.
Yeah.
There's a lot of time when there's no action at all. I mean, nobody's hitting the ball anywhere.
Yeah, nothing's going on.
That's exactly right.
And that's just, I mean, I don't have the greatest attention span, and that's just too much for me.
Well, it's dangerous to go to the game if you don't have a good attention span, unless you're high up. Because
I don't sit down in those foul lines. I'm not taking one off the head.
Good move, especially if people are addicted to their phones half the time. They don't watch the game half the time either. They had a real bad incident in Houston.
Yeah.
Last week where a little girl got hit.
Yeah.
Severely hurt for a while. I think she's going to be okay.
Right.
But that was a scary situation.
I do wonder why they don't just go ahead and run the nets down the line.
They do at certain places. It's not mandated. Yeah. Certain places do, others do not. I think the argument is that looking through a screen takes away from the fan experience. But somebody will
that takes away more than getting beaned in the head by the ball.
Somebody will be like anything else. Somebody will be killed, or severely injured, and then they'll have to adjust.
Yeah,
because it's fans. Your reactions are not the same as a player. You don't have a glove,
right?
You don't pay attention the same, and it scares me to death to see a young child or whatever at a Major League Baseball game.
Well, we go back to what we were just talking about, the dead time that's actually on the field.
Right.
I mean, I don't care how committed you are to watching the game. You're going to have periods of time in a 4-hour window sitting outside, especially day games in the sun or whatever, where you're just – the next at-bat just comes and you're like, oh, they're hitting?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they've already hit the ball at you before you even realize they're swinging the bat.
I agree.
And, I mean, that's got a lot to do with it. Even if you're not on your phone, I mean, even if you are committed to the game, they're asking a lot for you to pay attention to like that. And you're right. It will, unfortunately, take
a tragedy
before they mandate those nets. But as we were talking about with NCAA men's basketball, Major League Baseball is also one of those that's like, they don't change unless something makes them change.
Pretty archaic.
Yeah, they really are.
Yep.
Well, this is Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about the high school softball tournament, and we're going to mention Grace Turner from Monroe County.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag on ESPN Radio 1230.
Well, John, fascinatingly enough, they finished the high school baseball tournament over the weekend
Yes.
in Lexington. But they didn't even get the softball tournament started.
Same
before they
place.
called it. Yeah.
Lexington.
They were both playing at what, University of Kentucky facilities, right?
No. The
Okay.
baseball was at the other side of town. They were in the professional, the single.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, the Legends
Right.
at Park.
But still,
Yeah.
they just with the softball, they just said after I think it was Thursday or Friday. No, Friday morning.
morning,
they just said
11:46.
they just said we'll just wait till next week. We'll
Yeah.
take a week off.
Here's the funny thing. We sent Garrett
I
Browning up
can't
there.
imagine as a coach that will how you prepare and to practice a whole week is a nightmare for them.
Well,
Because these are you're kind of tuned in to play,
yeah.
not to practice for another week.
And I mean, school's over with for everybody.
Yes,
And, graduation's over with. And I'm sure there are seniors who had things planned and families who had things planned. Their season was going to be over with, win or lose. Move on to your life from here on out. But no, you got to come back again next week. And here's the thing I was going to tell you. So one of our sister ESPN station over in Bowling Green covers Warren East softball.
right.
And Garrett Browning drove up there, gets in the press box, and then they're like, it's canceled.
Well, WBKO was up there too.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's no forewarning. There's no, there's no way you made the 2-hour drive, and they don't even seem to make the effort.
Yeah, I mean it was just weird because they could have played Saturday. So there's a window to get in. Sunday, the state baseball was played Sunday. I mean,
Did we mention school's over with? They
Yeah.
could finish it up on Monday.
yeah.
I mean, it's
Monday, Tuesday. I know. I think they're claiming it'd be a better experience for the parents, and it wouldn't be as expensive to keep the kids up there in hotels and so forth. They didn't know they was going to play. I think that's what they were saying.
But I mean, would that same argument not apply to the baseball tournament?
I think it would.
Yeah. So I mean, it feels. I don't know. I just don't understand why the KHSAA treats softball differently. I mean, it seems like they're trying to be good to softball, but it's not working out that way.
Yeah, I mean, you could have made the argument that before all this happened that maybe baseball and softball shouldn't be played on the same weekend.
Right. I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't know. Obviously, they're having some issues with it being matched up the way it is.
Right. But I think they're trying to get it right.
Mm-hmm.
But this was a curious decision.
Yeah.
Playing in the same location in baseball, and one was moved, the other one's not moved.
Yeah. Well, and I will say this. Although this isn't true at the Legends Field unless it's changed, that's a grass field.
It is grass.
And that, at Western, we know that the baseball field is all artificial turf now.
So is UK's.
So is UK's. Now, the softball field at Western is not. But is the softball field at Kentucky, is it grass?
It's grass.
So, I mean, I get that there's some condition differences, and probably a minor league park has been built better, but I can't believe necessarily, unless the University of Kentucky just really scrimped on its
They got
drainage.
a tarp. I know they got a tarp there.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, it was curious, and I'm with you. I mean, I just don't understand why they didn't make some sort of effort to get the games played, because the contingency, I think it was in the Courier-Journal story, said that if they wind up having to double up the games, they will.
Yeah.
Well, they could have made that decision last week as well.
Yeah, doubling up games in softball is not unreasonable.
Yeah.
And they have to remember they were playing double elimination for the last 20 years
Right.
in the heat of the day
Yeah.
with 16 teams.
Yeah.
And they were playing more than 2 in a day. They were
Yeah.
playing like 7.
It seems they've swung back totally
Yeah.
the other way on this whole softball
Yeah.
situation.
It was a little curious, and it doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. Well, good luck to them all. We'll, I guess, over on the.
Yeah, I'm hoping for the 4th region to win.
Yeah. I mean, Warren East is one of the favorites. That takes me to this. Katie Gardner was Kentucky Miss Softball.
Correct.
Pitcher
and
hitter
That's correct.
for Warren East. So congratulations to her. Barron, got to see her during the season, and
They would
she was pretty
have
good.
East has an opportunity to be the 3rd team out of the region, 4th region, to win a state title.
Yeah.
Joining Greenwood and Allen.
Yeah.
Pretty good because softball was first started playing fast pitch in 1995.
Yep. And then also, so they have a good chance. So congratulations to her. Also of local interest, Grace Turner over at Monroe County. She set the 1A pole vault record, girls pole vault.
12-1.
Yeah.
Which beat several guys.
Yes,
I mean, it really did.
She's a, in her family.
And she won the state high jump, too. She jumped 5'4".
Right. Yeah. That's right. I mean, in her family, like her family's known for basketball. She's always been an outstanding track athlete.
She's found her own niche.
Yep.
That's right, and got a scholarship to Western.
Yeah,
and they've got a good track program.
That's right.
If you watch the NCAA track, now I did watch those on ESPN. I love watching that in track, and then the Western guys in track were really good. They got a good track program.
Yeah. So, I mean, congratulations to her. I'm sure she'll do well at Western.
She's got the work ethic and desire, I guarantee you.
Yeah, her sisters both have thus far turned out to be very good basketball players in college. So, and I think Lauren is the volleyball coach now at Monroe.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, they got a good athletic family over there.
Yes, they do.
And then also in the state baseball tournament, real quick, Tates Creek beat McCracken County, I think it was
4-2.
4-2
Sunday. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, McCracken. We were talking about this off air. McCracken County, they consolidated 3 schools to make McCracken County. This has been about 10 years ago now.
Have won the region every year in baseball.
Yeah, and I mean because Heath was good at baseball, Lone Oak was good at baseball, Reedland was the other one. I don't remember. I think they were kind of the odd one out of the 3 that got consolidated. But yeah, they've been a powerhouse in baseball since the consolidation. Actually, it's probably been 13 years. I think it was in 2006.
Okay.
And so, they can't quite get over the hump, right? They can't.
Have not won a state title. They've been in the finals twice, I believe.
Yeah. And then I think the surprise of the tournament was Breckenridge County. I didn't know they were that good at baseball, but they were.
First time they ever been there.
Yeah.
Got to the Final Four.
Yep. Also, the NBA Finals resume tonight. We will carry that game right here at pregame at 7 p.m. So you can stick around when we're done.
The soap opera that we call the NBA.
Yeah, Kevin Durant allegedly is playing tonight. I think it's too late. I don't care. I don't care. He makes an impact, but I just don't think you can take this amount of town off.
One practice and being out for a month.
Yeah,
I agree. I don't. If he. I think Toronto will win regardless.
Yeah.
What I've seen.
Yeah, and look,
he may hurt him more than he helps him when he goes out there with one day.
Yeah.
He's top 3 player in the world, but he's not going to be playing as a top 3 player in the world.
Yeah, he's going to be playing as a guy who's taking a month off from real live action.
I mean, if he goes out and plays real well and moves, then he probably should have played earlier. Let me be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah, like Friday when they were.
That's correct. So I don't expect a lot out of them.
Yeah.
And Toronto is turned into I've enjoyed watching them.
Mm-hmm.
I was not real happy with Leonard last year. I thought that was a weird deal to run away from San Antonio the way he did. But he is the type of superstar that I do like.
Yeah,
he doesn't complain. He just plays. Well, and he's unselfish. And the whole Toronto team is plays that way too. You don't see them do a lot of moaning and complaining. They just go out there and play, and that's kind of refreshing.
Yeah, you can tell he has had an impact on that team.
No question.
In terms of demeanor and everything. Just do the game. Play the game.
That's correct.
And also, I mean, there's no question that he loves playing basketball, which kind of makes last year with San Antonio
weird.
Even stranger.
Yeah, because San Antonio is not known to be they're very player friendly.
Yeah.
So that was just a weird situation. What happened?
It doesn't seem, when you saw Leonard and Popovich during the regular season when they played and they hugged each other and they were happy to see each other. It seems like the actual issue was between Kawhi Leonard and the medical staff, and not the coaching staff and that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And that makes it. I mean, you just wonder how that all pans out. But I guess an organization's supposed to trust its doctors. And they're going to trust what they say.
Well, he did take a year off for a kind of a calf deal.
Yeah.
It's a little. Oh no, it was a quad.
Yeah, it was a quad.
It's a little long.
It seems like it.
It does.
Yeah, it does. Seems overly excessive.
Yes,
but it's worked out for you.
It has.
Well, this is Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be back next week at 4:00.
Thanks for listening, and be sure and join James and John once again next Monday at 4 for the Brown Sports Bag, a local weekly sports machine presented by McDonald's of Glasgow.
This is WCDS Glasgow, ESPN Radio 1230, your total sports leader.